The night was calm and quiet over Seoul, South Korea. The city buzzed faintly with the sounds of late-night traffic and distant conversations. Streetlights cast soft glows on empty sidewalks, and the cool breeze carried the scent of spring blossoms. Everything seemed ordinary until a WSN single quotes to dot high above the earth. A strange shimmer appeared in the sky. It started as a faint ripple, like heat waves rising from asphalt under the summer sun. But within moments, the ripple grew brighter, more defined, until an enormous fleet of alien ships materialized in orbit around the planet. Their vessels were sleek and metallic, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light that pulsed rhythmically, almost as if they were alive. At first, no one noticed. The ships were too far away to be seen clearly by the naked eye, and most people were busy living their lives. But soon enough, satellites detected the anomaly, and alarms began blaring in military bases and research facilities around the world. Governments scrambled to respond, but the sheer size of the fleet left everyone paralyzed with uncertainty. There were hundreds, maybe even thousands of ships, each one larger than any human-made spacecraft. Among those watching the unfolding events was Jae-ho, a brilliant astrophysicist working at the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, KARI. He had been monitoring unusual activity in space for weeks, though he hadn't expected anything like this. When the data streamed into his workstation, his heart skipped a beat. The alien fleet wasn't just hovering idly. It was moving with purpose, adjusting its position to align perfectly with Earth's equator. Jae-ho leaned closer to his screen, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he analyzed the trajectory of the ships. Something about their movements struck him as odd. They weren't behaving like explorers or curious visitors. They were acting like conquerors. Every calculation confirmed his suspicion. These aliens intended to breach Earth's orbital defenses, and they weren't interested in negotiating. As Jae-ho worked feverishly to decode the aliens' actions, another key player prepared for what might come next. Min-young, a skilled fighter pilot in the Republic of Korea Air Force, received an urgent call summoning her to base. She had been enjoying a rare evening off, sipping tea on her apartment balcony while gazing at the stars. Now, she stood abruptly, her mug forgotten, and grabbed her uniform. Her mind raced with questions, but there was no time to dwell on them. Orders were orders. By the time Min-young arrived at the airbase, chaos reigned. Pilots shouted over radios, mechanics rushed to ready jets, and commanding officers barked instructions. The tension was palpable, thick enough to choke on. Min-young reported to her superior, who briefed her tersely. "We've got unidentified objects in orbit," he said, his voice tight with stress. "They're ignoring all attempts at communication. Be ready for anything." Min-young nodded sharply, masking her unease behind a stoic expression. She had trained for years to defend her country, but nothing could have prepared her for this. Aliens? Invasion? It sounded like something out of a movie, not real life. Still, she pushed her doubts aside and focused on the task ahead. If war was coming, she would do everything in her power to protect her home. Meanwhile, back at KARI, Jae-ho made a startling discovery. Buried deep within the archives of old space missions, he found records of a long-forgotten encounter between humanity and extraterrestrial life. Decades ago, during the height of the space race, several probes had ventured far beyond Earth's solar system. One of them, launched by the Soviet Union, had transmitted a brief message before going silent. "Do not approach Earth's borders. Unstable conditions detected." At the time, scientists dismissed it as interference or equipment malfunction. No one took it seriously. But now, staring at the alien fleet looming ominously in the sky, Jae-ho couldn't shake the feeling that the warning had been real and that humanity had failed to heed it. Whatever instability the probe had detected, it was clear the aliens knew about it too. And unlike humans, they didn't seem afraid. Hours passed in a blur of activity. World leaders convened emergency meetings, trying desperately to formulate a response. Some argued for diplomacy, hoping to establish peaceful contact with the invaders. Others advocated for immediate retaliation, fearing the aliens would strike first. In the end, indecision ruled the day, leaving Earth vulnerable. As dawn broke over Seoul, the alien fleet finally acted. Smaller scout ships detached from the main group and descended toward the atmosphere. They moved with precision, scanning the surface below as if searching for something. Panic erupted worldwide as news outlets broadcast footage of the mysterious crafts hovering ominously over cities and oceans. Jeho watched the developments unfold on live television, his stomach churning with dread. He knew the aliens wouldn't stop at reconnaissance. This was only the beginning. Beside him, his phone buzzed insistently. It was Hyan-Soo, a childhood friend turned infamous hacker. Hyan-Soo rarely reached out unless it was important, so Jeho answered immediately. "Did you see it?" Hyan-Soo asked without preamble, his voice tense. "I saw it," Jeho replied grimly. "What do you think?" "I think we're screwed," Hyan-Soo said bluntly. "But maybe not completely. Remember those old files you showed me last year? About the Cold War experiments?" Jeho frowned. "You mean the ones involving extraterrestrial tech? What about them?" "There's more to it than we thought," Hyan-Soo said cryptically. "Meet me tonight. I'll explain everything." Before Jeho could press for details, the line went dead. He stared at the phone, his mind racing. What did Hyan-Soo know? And how could it possibly help against an alien invasion? Elsewhere, Min-young climbed into the cockpit of her jet, her hands steady despite the turmoil inside her. Around her, other pilots performed final checks, their faces pale but determined. The order came through the radio: prepare for launch. As engines roared to life, Min-young took a deep breath and gripped the controls. Whatever happened next, she vowed to face it head-on above them. The alien scout ships continued their descent, oblivious to the storm brewing below. For now, humanity remained united in fear and confusion. But soon, the true test would begin, and the fate of Earth hung precariously in the balance. The alien scout ships descended lower into Earth's atmosphere, their sleek forms casting eerie shadows over the cities below. The world watched in stunned silence as these strange vessels ignored all attempts at communication. Instead of responding to humanity's desperate calls for dialogue, the aliens began broadcasting a chilling message of their own. "We are the Violet," the transmission boomed. Loud and clear, in perfect English and dozens of other languages. "Your species is primitive. Your planet is ours now." The words sent shockwaves through governments and citizens alike. Fear turned to anger as people realized the invaders had no intention of negotiating. World leaders convened an emergency summit, scrambling to form a unified response. But before any decision could be made, the Valeth acted first. Without warning, the scout ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, targeting military satellites orbiting Earth. In mere minutes, billions of dollars worth of technology was reduced to floating debris. Communication networks collapsed, plunging parts of the globe into chaos. Panic spread like wildfire as rumors of an impending invasion swept across social media and news outlets. Jeho sat glued to his computer screen at Kari, watching helplessly as the situation spiraled out of control. His mind raced with questions. Why were the Valeth so aggressive? What did they want from Earth? And most importantly, how could humanity possibly fight back against such advanced technology? His phone buzzed again, reminding him of Hyan-Soo's cryptic message from earlier. Jeho hesitated for only a moment before grabbing his coat and heading out. He didn't have time to dwell on the destruction unfolding above. He needed answers, and Hyan-Soo might be the only one who could provide them. Meanwhile, Minyoung and her squadron prepared for battle. Orders came down from command. Intercept the scout ships before they reached populated areas. Pilots scrambled to their jets, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Despite the odds, there was no room for fear. Failure was not an option. As engines roared to life, Minyoung took a deep breath and focused on the mission ahead. Her hands gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white. Around her, the airbase buzzed with activity. Mechanics shouted instructions, fuel trucks rumbled past, and the distant hum of approaching aircraft filled the air. It felt surreal, like stepping into a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "Listen up." The squadron leader barked over the radio. "Our job is simple. Stop those things from reaching the city. Whatever you do, don't let them breach our defenses. Good luck." With that, the jets thundered down the runway and soared into the sky. Minyoung's heart pounded as she climbed higher, the horizon stretching endlessly before her. Below, Seoul looked peaceful, unaware of the storm about to break overhead. She clenched her jaw and pushed the thought aside. There was no time for distractions. The scout ships appeared soon enough, hovering ominously above the outskirts of the city. They were smaller than the massive motherships in orbit, but still dwarfed the human jets. Their surfaces shimmered with the same pulsating blue light, making them look almost organic. Minyoung's stomach churned as she locked onto one of the targets. This wasn't just another training exercise, it was real. "Engage," the squadron leader ordered. Missiles streaked through the air, leaving trails of smoke behind them. Several hit their marks, causing small explosions that rocked the alien ships. For a fleeting moment, hope surged among the pilots. Maybe, just maybe, humanity stood a chance. But then, the Veilith retaliated. Energy beams lanced out from the scout ships, slicing through the skies with terrifying precision. One by one, jets exploded in fiery bursts, sending shards of metal raining down. Pilots screamed over the radio as their comrades were wiped out. Minyoung gritted her teeth and banked hard to avoid a blast, her jet shuddering violently. She knew she couldn't afford to panic, not if she wanted to survive. Despite the overwhelming firepower of the enemy, Minyoung refused to give up. Spotting an opening, she maneuvered her jet closer to one of the scout ships and fired a missile directly into its glowing core. The impact caused a chain reaction, engulfing the vessel in flames. Cheers erupted over the radio as the alien craft plummeted toward the ground. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining scout ships unleashed a devastating counterattack, obliterating much of Seoul's infrastructure in seconds. Buildings crumbled, streets cracked open, and fires raged unchecked. Minyoung barely escaped with her life, ejecting from her damaged jet moments before it crashed. She landed roughly in a field outside the city, her body aching but alive. As she lay there, staring up at the smoky sky, rage burned inside her. How dare these invaders destroy her home? How dare they treat humanity as insignificant? Clenching her fists, Minyoung vowed revenge. If the Veilith thought they could walk all over Earth, they had another thing coming. Back at Carrie, Jae-ho met Hyeon-soo in a dimly lit cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The hacker looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting someone or something to burst in at any moment. When Jae-ho slid into the seat across from him, Hyeon-soo wasted no time getting to the point. "I dug deeper into those files you showed me," he said, pulling out a tablet and tapping furiously. Turns out the experiments weren't just about studying alien tech. They were trying to reverse engineer it. Specifically, something called the Gaia Protocol. The what? Jae-ho asked, leaning forward. "It's a failsafe," Hyeon-soo explained. "A last-ditch effort to defend Earth if we ever faced an existential threat. Supposedly, it taps into some kind of ancient energy grid buried beneath the planet's surface. Think of it like Earth's immune system." Ho frowned. You're saying we can activate this protocol and fight back? Maybe, Hyan-Su admitted. But here's the catch. It hasn't been touched since the Cold War. Most of the scientists involved are either dead or retired. We'll need someone who actually knows how it works. Do you know anyone? Jae-ho pressed Hyan-Su hesitated, then nodded. There's one person, Dr. Yoon-ji. She worked on the original project. Live's off the grid now, though. Finding her won't be easy. Jae-ho didn't hesitate. Then we find her. We don't have a choice. While Jae-ho and Hyan-Su plotted their next move, Min-young regrouped with the surviving members of her squadron at a secret underground base. Morale was low. Too many good pilots had been lost. But when Jae-ho contacted them with news of the Gaia Protocol, a spark of hope ignited among the team. If there was even a chance of turning the tide, they had to take it. Dr. Yoon-ji proved harder to track down than expected. After days of searching, Jae-ho and Hyan-Su finally located her living in a remote mountain cabin. The elderly scientist was reluctant to help at first, dismissing their claims as absurd. But when shown footage of the Valeth fleet wreaking havoc, her expression hardened. They didn't listen, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. They never listen. What do you mean? Jae-ho asked. Yoon-ji sighed heavily. Decades ago, we warned the Valeth to stay away from Earth, sent probes with messages detailing the dangers. Thought they'd understand. Guess I was wrong. Her words sent a chill down Jae-ho's spine. So the warnings had been real, and the Valeth had dismissed them as meaningless threats. Now, humanity would pay the price. With Yoon-ji's reluctant assistance, the group devised a plan to reactivate the Gaia Protocol. The first step was locating one of the grid nodes buried near Mount Baekdu, a dormant volcano straddling the border between North Korea and China. Getting there wouldn't be easy, especially with the Valeth fleet tightening its grip on the planet. But failure wasn't an option. As preparations continued, Min-young reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the friends she'd lost, the homes destroyed, the lives shattered. Anger still burned inside her, but it was tempered by determination. Humanity might be outmatched, but it wasn't beaten yet. Not while people like Jae-ho, Hyan-Su, and Yoon-ji were willing to fight back. Above them, the Valeth fleet loomed larger than ever, its ships blotting out the sun. The invaders seemed confident, arrogant even, as if they believed victory was already theirs. But they underestimated one crucial factor: Earth itself. And soon they would learn just how dangerous that mistake could be. The journey to Mount Baekdu was anything but easy. Jae-ho, Hyan-Su, and Dr. Yoon-ji traveled in a battered old van, its engine groaning under the strain of rough mountain roads. Min-young and a small team of soldiers accompanied them, providing protection against both human and alien threats. The air grew colder as they climbed higher into the mountains, and the weight of their mission pressed heavily on everyone's shoulders. Yoon-ji sat in the passenger seat, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She hadn't spoken much since leaving her cabin, lost in thought. Jae-ho glanced at her occasionally, wondering what she was thinking. Did she regret agreeing to help? Or was she simply steeling herself for what lay ahead? Finally, after hours of tense driving, they reached the base of Mount Baekdu. The landscape was barren and desolate, covered in patches of snow that refused to melt even in spring. Jagged rocks jutted out of the ground like broken teeth, and the wind howled eerily through the peaks. It felt like the edge of the world, a place forgotten by time. "This is it," Yoon-ji said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but firm. "The first grid node is buried somewhere beneath us. How do we find it?" Jae-ho asked, pulling out a map marked with coordinates. "We don't have time for digging," Yoon-ji replied. "We'll need to use this." She held up a small device resembling an old-fashioned metal detector. its surface etched with strange symbols. It's tuned to resonate with the energy signatures of the grid. If we're lucky, it'll lead us straight to the node. Hyensu raised an eyebrow. And if we're not lucky, then we're dead, Eunji said bluntly. Either way, we don't have a choice. With no further discussion, the group set off on foot, trudging through the icy terrain. The device hummed faintly in Yoonji's hands, growing louder as they moved closer to their target. Every step felt heavier than the last, not just because of the altitude, but because of the stakes. Failure meant more than just losing their lives. It meant the end of humanity itself. As they climbed higher, the sky darkened ominously. Clouds gathered overhead, thick and menacing, blotting out the sun. Lightning crackled in the distance, illuminating the jagged peaks in flashes of white light. The Veilith fleet loomed above, its presence casting an oppressive shadow over the land. It was almost as if the invaders knew something was happening below, and they weren't happy about it. "They're watching us?" Min-young muttered, her hand resting on the grip of her rifle. "I can feel it. Stay sharp," one of the soldiers warned. "If they send scouts, we won't get another chance." Jae-ho nodded grimly. He wanted to believe they could pull this off, but doubt gnawed at him. What if the grid didn't work? What if the Gaia Protocol was nothing more than a myth? These questions swirled in his mind, threatening to overwhelm him. But he pushed them aside, focusing instead on putting one foot in front of the other. After what felt like hours, the device in Yoonji's hands let out a sharp beep. She stopped abruptly, her eyes scanning the area. "It's here," she said, pointing to a flat expanse of rock surrounded by boulders. "Start digging." The soldiers immediately went to work, using shovels and picks to break through the frozen ground. Their breath came in ragged gasps as they labored in the thin mountain air, sweat freezing on their brows despite the cold. Each strike of the pickaxe echoed loudly, blending with the howling wind. Finally, they hit something solid metal. Clearing away the dirt revealed a circular hatch embedded in the ground, its surface covered in intricate carvings that glowed faintly when touched. Yoonji knelt beside it, running her fingers over the designs. "It's older than I thought," she murmured. "Much older. This isn't just human technology. It's something else entirely." "Something else?" Jae-ho repeated, his voice tinged with unease. Yoonji shook her head. "No time to explain. Help me open it?" Together, the group pried the hatch open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A faint blue light pulsed from below, casting long shadows on the walls. The air smelled stale and metallic, like the inside of an ancient tomb. "Stay close," Min-young ordered, taking point with her weapon drawn. The others followed closely behind, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The descent seemed endless, each step taking them deeper into the heart of the mountain. At the bottom, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with towering machines that hummed softly, their surfaces glowing with the same blue light as the alien ships above. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. Wires and conduits snaked across the floor, connecting the crystal to the surrounding machinery. "This is it," Eunji whispered, awe evident in her voice. "The grid node. How do we activate it?" Jae-ho asked, stepping forward cautiously. Yoonji hesitated, her expression grim. "We don't just activate it. We awaken it. And once we do, there's no turning back." "What does that mean?" Min-young demanded. "It means Earth will fight back," Eunji explained. "But it also means we'll be unleashing forces we don't fully understand." "Are you ready for that?" No one answered. They didn't need to. The decision had already been made. Eunji approached the crystal, placing her hands on its smooth surface. She closed her eyes, muttering words in a language none of them recognized. The glow intensified, spreading outward in waves that rippled through the chamber. The machines roared to life, their hum growing louder until it became deafening. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently. Cracks appeared in the walls, and dust rained down from the ceiling. Alarms blared, warning of structural instability. Outside, the storm worsened, lightning striking the mountaintop repeatedly. "We need to get out of here," Hyan-Su shouted, grabbing Jae-ho's arm. "No!" Anji snapped. "Not yet. The process isn't complete, but the mountain's collapsing," Min-young yelled, shielding her face from falling debris. Yoonji ignored her, continuing her chant. Her body shook with effort, veins standing out starkly against her skin. The crystal's glow turned blinding, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. Then, with a final surge of energy, the chamber erupted in a burst of light. When the brightness faded, the group found themselves standing in silence. The trembling had stopped, and the machines were quiet once more. But outside, the storm raged fiercer than ever. Bolts of lightning struck the ground repeatedly, creating fissures that glowed with an unnatural blue light. "What did you do?" Jae-ho asked, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "I woke Gaia," Yoonji replied, her tone heavy with both pride and fear. "Now, we wait." Above them, the Velith fleet reacted to the sudden surge of energy. Scout ships descended en masse, drawn to the disturbance like moths to a flame. They hovered over the glowing fissures, scanning the area with their sensors. To them, it must have looked like some kind of geological anomaly, dangerous, perhaps, but ultimately harmless. They couldn't have been more wrong. From the depths of the fissures, towering crystalline constructs began to rise. They moved slowly at first, their forms shimmering with raw energy. As they emerged fully, they locked onto the Velith ships, their movements deliberate and purposeful. The aliens opened fire immediately, but their weapons had no effect. The construct surfaces absorbed the blasts without so much as a scratch. "What are those things?" Min-young whispered, staring in awe as the constructs engaged the enemy. "They're Earth's guardians," Yoonji said quietly. "Born from the planet's core, ancient entities older than life itself." The battle that followed was catastrophic. Explosions lit up the sky as the constructs tore through the scout ships, reducing them to ash. The Velith retaliated with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. One by one, their vessels fell, consumed by the relentless fury of Gaia's awakened defenders. As the conflict raged above, the group made their way back to the surface, exhausted but alive. They emerged into a world transformed. The once barren landscape now shimmered with ethereal light, the fissures pulsing with energy. It was beautiful and terrifying. "We did it," Jae-ho said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Didn't we?" "For now," Yoonji replied. "But this is only the beginning. The Velith won't give up so easily, not after this." Min-young nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She knew the fight wasn't over. Far from it. But for the first time in days, she allowed herself a flicker of hope. Humanity might be outmatched, but Earth itself was fighting alongside them. And that changed everything. In the distance, the remaining Velith ships regrouped, their commanders undoubtedly planning their next move. But for now, the invaders retreated, wary of the forces they had unleashed. Above the battlefield, the constructs stood watch, silent sentinels guarding the fragile world below. The battle between the Velith fleet and Earth's awakened guardians raged across the sky, a spectacle so massive it could be seen from every corner of the planet. The crystalline constructs moved with purpose, their towering forms glowing brighter with each passing moment. They radiated an energy that seemed alive, pulsing, shifting, adapting, as if they were not machines, but living beings born from the very soul of the planet. Above Mount Baidu, where the first grid node had been activated, the air crackled with electricity. Lightning danced wildly, striking the ground in chaotic bursts. The once barren landscape now shimmered with an otherworldly light, as though the mountain itself was breathing. The fissures in the earth continued to spread, glowing faintly blue, releasing waves of primal energy that pulsed outward like ripples on water. It was beautiful and utterly terrifying. Minyoung stood at the edge of the mountain, her eyes fixed on the chaos above. Her hands trembled slightly, though she clenched them into fists to steady herself. She had seen death up close, had felt the weight of failure and loss. But this was something else entirely. The sheer scale of the battle defied comprehension. Alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their wreckage raining down like fiery meteors. Yet for every ship destroyed, another took its place, relentless in their assault. "They're not backing down," one of the soldiers muttered beside her, his voice barely audible over the roar of explosions. "How long can those things hold out?" Minyoung didn't answer. She didn't know how long the constructs could last or even what they truly were. All she knew was that humanity's fate rested in their hands now. If these ancient guardians fell, Earth would have no defense left against the invaders. Jae-ho and Hyeon-soo worked frantically near the entrance to the underground chamber, setting up equipment to monitor the energy readings coming from the grid node. Yoonji hovered nearby, her face pale but determined. Despite her earlier confidence, she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. What they had unleashed was beyond anything anyone had anticipated. "We need to activate the final node," Jae-ho said urgently, glancing at the data streaming across his laptop screen. "One grid isn't enough. The constructs are strong, but they're being overwhelmed." "And where exactly is the final node?" Hyeon-soo snapped, frustration evident in his tone. "Do you expect us to climb another mountain while dodging alien fire?" "It's located near Jeju Island," Eunji replied calmly, though her hand shook as she adjusted the settings on the device used to locate the nodes. "If we can reach it and activate it, the entire grid will come online. That should give the constructs enough power to finish the job." "Should?" Hyeon-soo echoed skeptically. "You mean there's a chance it won't work?" "There's always a chance," Eunji admitted. "But we don't have time to debate it. Either we try or we let the Valeth win." Jae-ho nodded grimly. He turned to Minyoung, who had rejoined the group after watching the battle unfold. "We'll need your help getting there. The Valeth are focusing most of their forces here. If we move fast, we might slip past them." Minyoung hesitated for only a moment before nodding sharply. "I'll do whatever it takes." With their plan set, the group prepared to leave. Time was running out. The constructs were holding their own, but cracks were beginning to show. Several of the towering entities had already fallen, shattered by concentrated barrages from the Valeth fleet. Each loss sent a visible ripple through the remaining defenders, as if they shared some kind of collective consciousness. If too many fell, the entire network could collapse. The journey to Jeju Island was perilous. They traveled by helicopter, flying low to avoid detection. Even so, they weren't safe. Scout ships prowled the skies, their sensors scanning for any sign of movement. Twice, they had to take cover behind cliffs as enemy vessels passed overhead, their engines roaring like thunder. Despite the danger, no one spoke. The tension inside the helicopter was suffocating, each person lost in their own thoughts. Jae-ho stared out the window, watching the ocean below stretch endlessly toward the horizon. Hyeon-soo fiddled nervously with the tracking device, muttering under his breath about probabilities and risks. Minyoung sat rigidly in her seat, her hand resting on the grip of her rifle, ready to fight if necessary. Only Yoonji seemed calm, her gaze distant as if she were seeing something none of them could. When they finally reached Jeju Island, the scene was eerily quiet. The island's lush greenery and iconic volcanic peaks stood untouched, a stark contrast to the destruction unfolding elsewhere. But the tranquility was deceptive. As they approached the location of the final grid node, the air grew heavy, charged with static electricity. Birds fled from the trees, and the ground beneath their feet vibrated faintly, as though the earth itself was uneasy. "This is it," Yunji said, stopping abruptly. She pointed to a rocky outcrop overlooking the sea. "The node is buried right there." Without wasting time, the group began digging. The process was painstaking, made worse by the knowledge that every second counted. Above them, the sounds of battle grew louder, echoing across the water. Flashes of light illuminated the horizon as more Veilith ships descended, drawn to the surge of energy emanating from the partially activated grid. Finally, they uncovered the hatch. It looked identical to the one they had found at Mount Baekdu, its surface etched with glowing symbols that pulsed faintly. Yunji knelt beside it, her hands trembling as she placed them on the cold metal. "This is it," she whispered. "Once I start, there's no stopping it." "Do it," Jeho urged, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. Yunji closed her eyes and began chanting again, her words flowing in a language older than humanity. The symbols on the hatch flared to life, bathing the area in blinding light. The ground shook violently, and cracks spread across the rocks, glowing with the same blue energy as before. Suddenly, the sky above erupted in chaos. Dozens of Veilith ships appeared, descending rapidly toward the island. Their weapons fired indiscriminately, carving deep scars into the landscape. Trees ignited, rocks shattered, and the ocean boiled where energy beams struck the water. "We've got company," Minyoung shouted, raising her rifle. "Hold them off." The soldiers opened fire, their bullets bouncing harmlessly off the alien ship's shields. But their efforts weren't entirely futile. They provided enough cover for Yunji to continue her work. Her voice grew louder, more urgent, as the energy pouring from the hatch intensified. "Almost there," she cried, sweat dripping down her face. Jeho and Hyensu crouched beside her, shielding her with their bodies as debris rained down around them. Explosions rocked the ground, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Through it all, Yunji kept chanting, her focus unbroken. Then, with a deafening roar, the hatch burst open. A column of pure energy shot skyward, connecting with the clouds above. The light was so bright, it forced everyone to shield their eyes. When they looked again, the battlefield had changed completely. The constructs that had been fighting the Veilith fleet suddenly merged together, their forms dissolving into streams of radiant energy. These streams coalesced into a single colossal entity, a being of unimaginable size and power. Its body shimmered like crystal, and its presence filled the sky, blotting out the sun. The Veilith fleet froze, their weapons faltering as they faced this new threat. For a moment, there was silence, a stillness so profound it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Then, the entity moved. It swept across the sky with effortless grace, its movements precise and deliberate. Wherever it passed, the Veilith ships disintegrated, consumed by the raw energy it emitted. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds, leaving nothing behind but ash and echoes. The invaders' arrogance crumbled in the face of this unstoppable force, their attempts at resistance proving futile. As the entity continued its devastating advance, Minyoung watched in awe. She had never believed in gods or higher powers, but standing there, witnessing the wrath of Earth itself, she couldn't help but feel small. This wasn't just a weapon, it was justice, vengeance, and protection all rolled into one. When the last of the Veilith ships disappeared, the entity paused, hovering silently above the planet. Then, without warning, it split apart, reforming into smaller constructs that drifted back toward the fissures in the earth. One by one, they sank into the glowing cracks, vanishing beneath the surface. The storm faded, replaced by an eerie calm. The sky cleared, revealing stars twinkling faintly in the night. It was over. For a long moment, no one spoke. They simply stood there, staring at the horizon, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Finally, Jae-ho broke the silence. "We did it," he said softly. "Didn't we?" Yoon-ji nodded, though her expression remained somber. "For now. But this isn't the end. The Veilith may return. And next time, we might not be so lucky." Min-young sighed heavily, lowering her rifle. She wanted to feel relief, triumph, anything. But all she felt was exhaustion and a nagging sense of unease. The battle might have been won, but the war was far from over. As they began making their way back to safety, the group couldn't shake the feeling that they had merely delayed the inevitable. Earth had fought back, yes, but at what cost? And how many secrets still lay buried beneath its surface, waiting to be uncovered? For now, however, there was peace. Fragile, uncertain, and hard-won, but peace nonetheless. And sometimes that was enough. The aftermath of the battle left Earth in a state of stunned silence. Cities that had been spared destruction buzzed with whispered conversations and hushed prayers, while those that bore the scars of the Veilith attack were eerily quiet, their streets littered with debris and abandoned vehicles. Governments scrambled to piece together what had happened, but no official explanation could fully capture the magnitude of the event. The alien fleet was gone, obliterated by forces humanity barely understood. And yet the world felt far from safe. Jae-ho sat alone in his office at Kari, staring blankly at the stacks of papers and glowing screens around him. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for a cup of cold coffee, though he didn't drink it. Sleep had eluded him since the battle, his mind replaying every moment, the hum of the grid nodes, the blinding light of the constructs, the sheer terror of facing an enemy beyond comprehension. He knew they had won, but the victory felt hollow. Too many questions remained unanswered. Across town, Min-young recovered in a military hospital, her body bruised and battered but healing. She spent most of her time gazing out the window, watching the sun rise and set over the damaged skyline of Seoul. Her thoughts drifted off into the friends she had lost, their faces haunting her dreams. She told herself it was worth it, that their sacrifice had saved countless lives. But the weight of survival pressed heavily on her chest. Heroes weren't supposed to feel this empty. HYEON-SU, meanwhile, disappeared without a trace. After helping Jae-ho and Eun-ji reactivate the Gaia protocol, he vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only a cryptic message scrawled on a scrap of paper. Some secrets are better left buried. Jae-ho tried reaching out to him multiple times, but his calls went unanswered. It was as if Hyeon-su had never existed, erased from the world, just like the Veilith fleet. Eun-ji retreated to her cabin in the mountains, refusing all attempts at contact. She knew too much about the Gaia protocol, about the ancient forces tied to Earth's core, and the burden of that knowledge weighed on her soul. In the solitude of her home, she spent hours poring over old documents and notes, searching for answers to questions she couldn't voice. Was the awakening of Gaia truly a gift or a curse? And what would happen if humanity failed to learn from its mistakes? As days turned into weeks, the world struggled to move forward. Governments convened secret meetings to discuss how to handle the truth about the invasion. Some argued for transparency, believing the public deserved to know the full extent of the threat. Others pushed for secrecy, fearing mass panic or worse, an arms race fueled by the remnants of alien technology left behind. In the end, a compromise was reached. The incident would be labeled a natural disaster caused by geomagnetic anomalies, and the true story would remain classified. But not everyone bought the official narrative. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire across social media, fueled by grainy videos of the battle and eyewitness accounts from people who claimed to have seen the crystalline constructs rising from the Earth. Scientists debated whether the phenomenon was evidence of extraterrestrial life or proof of something far more profound, a connection between humanity and the planet itself. For many, The event served as a wake-up call, a reminder of how fragile life truly was. Jae-ho found himself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a hero for his role in reactivating the Gaia Protocol. Reporters camped outside his apartment, begging for interviews, while colleagues praised him for his ingenuity and bravery. But fame brought little comfort. Instead of celebrating, Jae-ho grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of action from world leaders. They treated the activation of the protocol as a one-time miracle, ignoring the warnings embedded in its design. Humanity had narrowly avoided catastrophe, but Jae-ho knew they couldn't rely on luck forever. Determined to make a difference, he began advocating for transparency. Using simple language and clear visuals, he explained the basics of the Gaia Protocol to anyone who would listen, emphasizing the importance of understanding Earth's defenses before another crisis occurred. At first, his efforts met resistance. Governments feared exposing sensitive information, and skeptics dismissed his claims as science fiction. But slowly, his message gained traction. People started asking questions, demanding answers, and Jae-ho realized he wasn't alone in wanting the truth. Min-young returned to active duty once her injuries healed, though she approached her work with a newfound sense of purpose. Flying jets no longer felt like just a job. It was a responsibility, a promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. She trained harder than ever, pushing her limits both physically and mentally. When asked about her experience during the invasion, she spoke openly, sharing stories of courage and loss to remind others of the cost of complacency. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring young recruits to join the ranks of the Air Force. One evening, as Min-young walked along the edge of a runway, she spotted Jae-ho waiting for her near the hangar. He looked tired but determined, clutching a folder filled with papers. She raised an eyebrow as she approached. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. "I need your help," Jae-ho replied. "I'm trying to gather support for a global initiative to study the Gaia Protocol and prepare for future threats. I think you'd be perfect to lead the military side." Min-young hesitated, glancing at the folder in his hands. "You really think we can convince them?" "We have to try," Jae-ho said firmly. "If we don't, who will?" After a long pause, Min-young nodded. "Count me in." Their partnership marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for them, but for humanity as a whole. Together, they worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between science and defense, combining Jae-ho's expertise with Min-young's leadership to create a framework for understanding Earth's ancient guardians. Their efforts weren't always easy. Resistance came from all sides and progress was slow. But with each small victory, hope grew stronger. Far away, in the depths of interstellar space, fragments of the Veilith fleet drifted aimlessly through the void. Among the wreckage, faint transmissions echoed silently, carrying a single message: "Do not approach Earth. Do not approach Earth." Whether the warning reached its intended audience remained unknown. For now, Earth stood alone, guarded by forces few could comprehend. But Jae-ho, Min-young, and those who shared their vision vowed to remain vigilant, for the universe was vast, and Earth's borders might one day face new challenges. As Min-young stood beneath the stars, her gaze fixed on the horizon, she allowed herself a flicker of optimism. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with uncertainty and danger. But for the first time in a long time, she believed humanity might actually stand a chance. And that belief gave her strength. The night stretched endlessly before her, vast and unbroken. Somewhere beyond the darkness, the universe watched and waited.